I hope this one goes quick, because it's going to be a little toasty in this very, very small room here in a moment.
Hi, everyone. Look at that big smile here, where today I'm bringing you another rendition of Let's Argue, the show where you tell me your hot takes, your opinions, your tough questions, and I answer them in a way that will hopefully allow me to keep monetization on this video. Let's begin.
Everything should be available on Prismatic. Prismatic should be the pinnacle of build crafting and endgame builds. The previous subclasses should be used to teach newer players the game. They do not need to be brought up to Prismatic. If you want to play all arc, select the all arc options in Prism.
Man, I feel like we're kind of at like a weird impasse with Prismatic, because like it's so obviously better to be on Prismatic just specifically for Transcendence alone a lot of the time. Like it's a very, very powerful effect to have on your character. But I don't necessarily agree that everything should just be on Prismatic, because then you do ultimately, you know, kind of like soft sunset all of the other subclasses, and I don't know if I really want to use them as like a learning tool kind of a thing. I think it's okay to have solo subclasses, but it's somewhat apparent that Bungie does need to do something to make those individual mono element subclasses a bit more tantalizing to use over some of the more premier builds that we have available in Prismatic, because, you know, it's just it's pretty cut and dry. Prismatic, it's like really good, but yeah, you look at something like Storm's Keep, for example, on Titan, kind of changing up the art game, which is, I think, someone else asked a different question here in a moment about Storm's Keep. But you look at something like that as a way to kind of incentivize using the base arc subclass over the Prismatic subclass, because you don't have access to that. So yeah, I don't necessarily agree that everything should be on Prismatic, because that also introduced like a bunch of other, you know, factors like the exotic class item and like having to compensate for having every single different combination on there, and just what kind of problems it can make. Prismatic right now is like very specifically tuned to only work with like so many different things, and giving it access to literally everything sounds like an incredible balancing nightmare. And I would not want to see the game go in that direction right now anyway.
What's your favorite way to introduce a sponsored segment?
So I usually like to wait until we find some kind of a stopping point. Hi, it's really hot in that thing, and this video is sponsored by Cook Unity. I've been using Cook Unity for over a year now, and I've even gotten some of my friends to try it out without the use of bribery. So, what is Cook Unity? They're a chef-to-consumer platform delivering fresh meals to you, which are made by actual people. And I love that, because it means I don't have to deal with any of the hassle of physically keeping myself alive. Cook Unity does it for me. Mentally, on the other hand, that's a lot harder. They have over 100 meals every week to pick from, with options for many dietary needs. Keto, vegan, low calorie, paleo, even more than that. But even if you're like myself with the palate of a 6-year-old, you are still going to find plenty of options. They got, what do you call it? Vegetables. Yeah, not usually my thing. But if Cook Unity can get me to eat broccoli for the first time in a few years, yeah, you know, maybe they're doing something right. Some meals I got in the fridge right now are the Peruvian chicken fried rice by Chef Andres Mendez, the ham, egg, and cheese burrito by Chef Santos Jimenez, and the Chipotle barbecue chicken quesadilla by Chef Ruben Garcia. Yeah, again, okay? I really like it. So if you're interested in keeping yourself alive, head on over to cookunity.com/Datto50 or hit the link in the description to get 50% off your first order of Cook Unity. Be sure to use code Datto50 as well. That's cookunity.com/Datto50, code Datto50 to get your first meals for 50% off. Thank you very much to Cook Unity for sponsoring this video.
Destiny Rising will get new/more content and quality of life features at a much faster pace than Destiny 2 ever has. DTG will be a hellscape for a full year, the subreddit, after it launches.
I don't know why it'll be a hellscape, maybe other than just like jealousy that Destiny Rising is potentially going to get some more features faster, but I don't think it's that hot of a take that like mobile games. I don't want to say mobile games are easier to develop for because I don't actually know the answer to that. But Destiny Rising is just a different game compared to Destiny 2 in terms of like how it's built and what features they want to have and this and this and this. So they might have maybe like the more freedom to do that, or maybe they just they're better equipped to make those kinds of things happen. But mobile games need to be constantly updated. And Destiny's already a game that's like, I know we give it a lot of crap for like, oh, it's kind of stale right now, but like they do be constantly updating the game and constantly patching and constantly putting in, episodes and seasons and expansions and this and that. But mobile games need to do that to keep people locked in to that ecosystem, probably even more than your average live service game on, a console or a PC or something like that. But as I've outlined in my Destiny Rising video, I don't think Destiny Rising is necessarily designed for Destiny 2 players on PC. I think if the subreddit is going to throw a fit at anything, it will potentially be some of the monetization practices that will potentially be in that game. We haven't heard a lot about Destiny Rising since the open beta or like whatever the hell it was. So we don't really have a ton of insight on that just yet, but yeah, I don't really even think that's hot of a take. Like, wow, mobile game gets updated a lot. Like, you should probably see that coming.
I'm looking forward to Rite of the Nine, but I'm not looking forward to it being a limited time event. I understand FOMO works, it worked on me during Pantheon, but it made the experience stressful. It would be better if events like this were yearly.
I would be totally okay if Bungie was like, hey, we got Rite of the Nine, dungeon style Pantheon type thing, but we'll bring back Pantheon from last year in case you weren't around to do it back then, right? It would be like the same requirements and like the same release cadence and all that kind of stuff for the people who weren't here. But if you were here and you already have the title and all that kind of stuff, there wouldn't be like a big incentive to go do it. So you could just kind of focus on Dungeon Pantheon. But I feel like that also is a little contradictory because you just said like, I don't like the stress of like the FOMO of like the limited time that these events are around, but now you're bringing back Pantheon in addition to like Dungeon Pantheon. So now you have double the amount of things that you would maybe want to participate in, but the same probably amount of time that you would have to complete those things. So now you're like dealing with double the amount of things. I could see people also being kind of stressed out about that. I think my hot take is like, I'm kind of okay with some limited time events being in the game. Just because like I think moments of like I was there are really fun in video games, right? Where they're not always around 100% of the time, or they're not coming back yearly. Like sometimes it was just a thing, and it was like it was cool in the moment, and it was a neat thing for the people active on the game. But in the case of like Pantheon or something like that, especially considering how well it was received, if they wanted to bring it back, for 2 months out of the year every year, I wouldn't see a big problem with that at all. Chicken nuggets are always meant to be eaten dry. No, man. Why don't you take your dry ass chicken nuggets back to the Sahara? I'm gonna sit here with my freaking honey barbecue sauce. Just slathering it. It's like the chicken nugget is a vehicle for me to eat the sauce. Okay? Chicken eaten dry. Notswap is not that big of a deal. Anyone who claims to be affected by it pretends like they're not used to GMs. So the reason why notswap is being brought up right now is because it's going to be potentially, I think it is being introduced with the Rite of the Nine Dungeon Pantheon event thing that is coming up pretty soon, where Bungie is putting in notswap, and I think the hardest versions of the dungeons that we are going to be playing in an attempt to maybe reduce the amount of times people are swapping their armor mid-encounter. and I'm guessing this because I'm guessing they're doing this because I could see a world where Bungie is potentially entering another Reckoning situation. So for those not in the loop, Reckoning was an activity back in Season 6 where back in even like way back when, we were very difficult to kill, mainly due to Well of Radiance and how often you could get it. Like, you could chain Well of Radiance into a tether, into a Well of Radiance, into a tether, like, and basically have Well of Radiance nonstop. And this was a problem back then because Bungie had to resort to enemies basically one-shotting you, like on the Reckoning bridge. There was a bridge, and ogres would be the main way to kill people by just eye-beaming them off of the map. Like, that was the only way they can kill us. So it wouldn't surprise me if Bungie's entering some kind of a situation now where they're having to design dungeon encounters, raid encounters, with the knowledge that people are going to be able to hot swap to any exotic and any setup that they want on a moment's notice, right? They can do it whenever they want with no drawback. So Bungie has to assume that you are, like, not exactly doing this, but you're basically wearing every exotic and every weapon at the same time. You can be the strongest you could ever be at every single moment of an encounter. And that could make it kind of weird to design stuff because now if you're not compensating for that, then your fights are potentially undertuned and not really challenging the people kind of at the upper end. But if you do account for that and people at the bottom end are not doing all those swaps, now it feels like some fights are overtuned because Bungie has to assume that you're doing the maximum best thing every single moment of every single encounter. So notswap, all it does is I think it just resets your ability energy whenever you make any kind of a swap. So like weapon related swaps, I don't think will have like that big of an issue. And I do think people will still continue to do some armor swapping. I've said it a few times before. I'm not the hugest fan of armor swapping, but I also come from, I come from the olden times where people weren't really doing that as much. Or you didn't really have the freedom to do it as much because we didn't have loadouts and this and that. And you just also, I don't feel like you really needed to that much. I don't like playing the menu game. To me, mastery of an encounter is like compensating for everything that you know you are going to experience in that encounter and crafting the most optimal loadout that you possibly can that will be able to fight against as many things that you need to fight against in that encounter. I prefer gameplay like that where I'm not constantly like, okay, I gotta switch to this, I gotta switch to that, I gotta switch my surge, I gotta switch this out. But I understand there's absolutely a skill element to building armor sets for every single part of a fight because it shows how well you know the fight and how well you can really maximize your power in any sort of given activity or any encounter at all. And that is also a display of skill, right? To know when to do things and at what moment and what exotic you need to bring in, what weapon you need to swap in. And there's a lot of people who like that as well. So it's one of those things where I don't feel like there is a right or wrong answer. It's just kind of more of a preference thing. But, Bungie is starting to be like, okay, you guys are starting to take it, a little far, like is giving us some problems. So I think that's why they're going to be experimenting with it. So I'm looking forward to see how that experiment ends up going and if it even really affects anything at all. Apples are the best snack. The best snackless, the best one. Look, Brim, he do be loving his appy slices, okay? He do be chomping on some appy slices. And I like an apple every now and then, but I will tell you what I've been snacking on the most recently, and I just converted at least Mr. Fruit's wife, Claire, to these, is thin Triscuits. Not the big squares. I'm talking like they make thin triangle Triscuits. And I could go through a full box without even realizing that I've gone through the full box. Like regular Triscuits to me, like I love regular Triscuits, but they tire out my jaw. Like there's a lot to chew through there and I would be eating them. Maybe that's kind of like a good thing. Like, dude, my jaw's getting so tired. I should stop eating. Like there's a built-in mechanism to be like, hey, stop eating so many, man. Like you hit the serving size. With the thin Triscuits, there's just no stopping me. Like you just keep going and going and going, and before you know it, you're through a whole box. Try them. I got with the applewood barbecue flavor, but like they're all good. People shouldn't be able to go to the lighthouse unless they go flawless in trials. The loot feels good post rework, but there is 0 prestige left in the end game PvP mode.
Your membership has been accepted.
Elitist Datto, like, 100% agrees with you. Elitist Datto's like, yeah, the lighthouse should be this very prestigious thing in what is supposed to be the end game PvP mode. Not everyone's going to make it there. Regular Datto is kind of like, I get it, but in order to help save Trials a little bit more from, just completely being dominated by the people at the very, very top end, it was very clear that Bungie needed to do something, and the loot rework I've only heard very, very, very good things about the loot rework. So it seems like a lot of people are very happy about that. But, it's like, dude, the lighthouse has been like a thing for like a decade now, and there's people that haven't been there, and I'm like, all right, just throw them a bone, man. Just like, if that's what it's going to take to get people into Trials and the population to increase, and you actually have people playing this activity, for the health of the game, for the benefit of the Empire, give them a ticket to the lighthouse, man. Just give them one ticket, let them go, let them see it, let them experience it, and then we call it a day.
The main reason D2 numbers dropped so horrendously in Revenant was because of the removal of craftable seasonal weapons.
I refuse to believe this. Like, Bungie could come out and like have concrete evidence of this being the case, and I would still refuse to believe it. There is no way in hell that the batch of weapons that we got in episode 2 would drive any more engagement than we had in episode 2 without crafting. Like, the weapons were so mid, and I refuse to believe that people would have been like, oh, well, at least they're craftable, and then got all the patterns and then continued to play the game. Everyone would have done the exact same thing. They would have got all their patterns, and then they just would have left. So maybe at the beginning of the episode, sure, you see higher population numbers as people are grinding out those weapons, the red borders and all that. But as soon as everybody gets all their red borders, goodbye. And like, I think the problems of Revenant was mainly more due to Revenant itself, right? Like, people maybe not interested that much in that storyline. We also had like one of the core activities being Onslaught, which is a thing that we already experienced, so it didn't really feel that fresh or that new or anything like that, even though I know they did like some slight adjustments here and there. They added a couple things, but it was still relatively the same experience as we had with Into the Light, with the loot being not as good, and we didn't really have shinies, and then the double perks weren't really dropping that much either. So I refuse to believe it is solely on that. Maybe a very small factor, but definitely not the whole pie.
The Nether's mechanics, particularly the health scaling, should be considered for the next evolution of the PvE sandbox. It's so much more interesting and can really challenge current build crafting norms.
I don't know if I want to have the health thing in the Nether be in more places unless they were like very specifically built for it. But like, I'm okay with like the Nether doing that health stuff, right? Like, because it's thematically linked in there as well. They're trying to do some sort of a roguelike type experience in the Nether. I'm okay with it being there. I don't know if I would want to see it everywhere, if that's kind of what you're getting at. I think here and there it's kind of okay. It's like a neat mechanic that you have to kind of build around. It's a different way that you have to think about playing the game, even though, I still am just yeeting my body at like 14,000 enemies and just dying anyway because we have a million res tokens, right? So I would be interested in seeing Bungie explore some more health related modifiers or mechanics in other parts of the game, but maybe not everywhere. Like, you look at oscillation, for example, the modifier in like the strike playlist or whatever. That's something where like I'm okay with it in select parts of the game, but do I really want to worry about like oscillation in the regular Vanguard playlist? Not really. That's kind of like I just let me like kind of roll around with whatever weapons I want to roll around with. And then if we really want to scale it up, throw that, sure, throw it in the master, throw it in the GM, whatever. I know I have to set up a more specific loadout for that. So I think done sparingly, done in the right places, I'm on board if Bungie wants to try out some more experimental type modifiers when it comes to health, because like health regen can just go so crazy.
Spiciest take that I can think of, Storm's Keep is largely what's making Striker relevant. Without Storm's Keep, everything it does that's relevant to endgame is largely still done better by Prismatic. This is like the white guy spicy level when you go to like a Thai restaurant or something like that. You're not even at a 1 on the spice level. You're at white guy spice. I don't think this is a very spicy take. Like, it's very obvious that Storm's Keep is helping Striker Titan, kind of like a Renaissance era when it comes to playing an Arc Titan. There's still a couple of good Arc Titan setups out there, right? Like, I still really, really love my point contact cannon brace setup, but is obviously not super end game friendly because it's based around melee and standing still, right? And you got Skullfort in there as well. But I think that might be more of like a prismatic being way too strong for Titan and also only really having 1 or 2 builds for Titan, more than like, oh, Storm's Keep is, that's the thing that's keeping Striker relevant. Like, yeah, it is, because like it's a good PvE thing that you can use in pretty much any spot in the game. And if that's what they got to do to like buff up some of these other subclasses to also incentivize them to be used in other parts of the game, okay, we'll get there. But also, like, not everything is going to be good everywhere, right? Not every single thing can be designed to be good for every single situation, right? It's the same thing with like exotics, right? Some exotics are just like really good everywhere, and then some of them are just neat little toys. And that's okay. That's okay. Okay, I think that's enough questions. I hope, anyway. It feels like I was talking for forever. How long is this recording? 45 minutes. I have some editing to do. Thank you to everyone who has responded on Blue Sky. If you're wondering why I didn't answer any of the other questions, it's because a lot of them are continuing to talk about leveling and crafting's good and crafting's bad, and leveling good and leveling bad. And we've just kind of talked about those points to death already, and I'm kind of tired of talking about them. So, but thank you for submitting your questions. Maybe I'll do it on YouTube next time, or I'll do it somewhere else in my stream. I don't know where I'm going to do it, but it'll be like another 2-3 months before we do another one. So yeah, if you want to check out the other 2 episodes that I've done, you can probably click around my head somewhere, like now. I really hope you clicked on one, because otherwise this is going to be awkward. No? Okay.